What's a pointless fact you know? During the papal election of 1292 to 1294, the cardinals were taking a long time to select a pope. A hermit wrote to the cardinals saying if they didn't choose a pope soon, God would be pissed. The cardinals elected this hermit as Pope Celestine V. He initially refused and had to be dragged to Rome. He spent his entire papacy writing the rule that popes were allowed to resign. When he was finished writing it, he resigned. Then afterwards he was imprisoned by the next pope who was worried he would become an antipope. He died in prison 2 years later at 81. The reason vampires can't see themselves in mirrors is because mirrors used to be made with a layer of silver inside. However, modern mirrors don't, meaning that vampires could look in the mirror now. One day an innocent vampire looks into the mirror and sees his image on display. He believes he's not a vampire anymore until he go out for a walk in the morning. If you took the whole solar system and shrunk it down so that the sun was at your head and the orbit of Pluto was at your feet, Uranus would be just where you'd expect it to be. The line between the two numbers in a fraction is called the vinculum. So is the bar above the numbers in a radical sign. It's a grouping symbol just like brackets and parentheses. Also, have you ever thought about how the division sign looks like a vinculum with 2 dots where the numbers should be? Bumblebees are the only kind of bees that can pollinate a potato. Bumblebees are pollen sluts as the only bee that will gather nectar from any flower. They're going to save our ecosystem. Pigeons, along with flamingos and penguins, produce milk. As in, they produce a fatty, creamy fluid and exclusively feed their young on it for the first few weeks of their lives before weaning them, controlled by the hormone prolactin, same as in mammals. Wait, where does it come from? Do pigeons have mini boobs or something? It gets secreted into their crop and they regurgitate it to feed their young, so it's aptly called crop milk. Scientists once harvested it and fed it to chicken chicks and made them grow really fast. A British submarine and a French submarine, both carrying nuclear missiles, collided with each other because they couldn't detect one another. Pretty damn effective. If you took all of the asteroids in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter and mashed them together into a single big object, it would only amount to 4% the mass of Earth's moon. The largest asteroid series accounts for about 1/3 of the total mass of the asteroid belt. And contrary to what sci-fi movies and games would have you believe, the asteroid field is so sparse that you can't see them from each other without a telescope. Rather than having to carefully navigate through an area full of space rocks, the most likely scenario is that you'll pass right through without even seeing any asteroids. A dad is the 10th most popular Christmas list request for kids. I put that on my Christmas list every year as a kid. It started serious, but then became a joke between me and my mom. She finally came through last year. Disney park employees point with 2 fingers instead of 1. The reason for this, that they tell you that pointing with 1 finger in other cultures is disrespectful. While that is true, they usually avoid the part that Walt Disney himself used to point with 2 fingers. Because he was always smoking. They actually go to great lengths to hide this, and any official picture of him has the cigarette photoshopped out. It only still exists in old videos because of how hard it was to not show that. There once existed an alleged theoretical state of war that lasted 335 years and 19 days, and was between the Dutch and an archipelago off the coast of southwest England called the Isles of Scilly. What's more, there were no casualties, because the Dutch forgot that they were at war with the Isles. It wasn't until a Scilly historian contacted the Dutch about the war in 1985 and received the information that the war was still technically ongoing, that a peace treaty was signed in 1986. On a similar note, the shortest war ever recorded in history was between England and Zanzibar, fought on August 27, 1896. It lasted only 45 minutes. More of the London Underground runs above ground than in tunnels. Semi-related, 40% of New York's subway is above ground. Puppies sneeze at each other to let them know that they're fighting for play, not for real. After the Paraguayan War, 1870, there were only 22,000 males left alive in the country. Almost 70% of its adult male population died, which left a female-to-male ratio of 4 to 1. If I remember correctly, They allowed polygamy to help repopulate the country. A single piece of glitter is called a scintilla. Possums eat about 5,000 ticks in one season and help prevent the spread of Lyme disease. Thanks, only marsupial in North America. MasterCard numbers start with 5. Visa cards start with 4. Discover cards and Store specialty cards start with 6. Amex starts with 3. Our retail in high school. I knew this, but what I don't know is why the website makes me choose my credit card kind from the drop-down if it can be determined by the first digit. Also, separately, memorizing my credit card number was both the most convenience and most expensive thing I've ever done. In men, the average speed of semen exiting the penis during ejaculation is 28 miles per hour, which is slightly faster than Usain Bolt's world record running pace, 27.8 miles per hour. Also faster than the average speed of a school zone, therefore making it illegal. Granted, there's probably other reasons ejaculating in a school zone would be illegal. Lobsters have colorless blood. Related fact: a starfish's blood is just salt water. More collect calls are made on Father's Day than any other day. The national animal of Scotland is the unicorn. And their national flower is a thistle. The only flower I want is one that lets me slice through an Englishman's throat. John Oliver. And Wales gets a dragon. The UK should be a hell of a lot cooler than it is. Barbie's full name is Barbara Millicent Roberts. My Spanish teacher used this as extra credit, so it isn't entirely pointless. A jiffy is the amount of time it takes light to travel 1 centimeter in a vacuum. There's a poison ivy in Australia that's called suicide ivy because its sting hurts so much that people often just put a bullet to their head to end the pain. We also have a jellyfish that does something similar. I don't know if anyone's pulled the trigger because of it, but they begged their doctors to. Tapirs can scratch their ears with their dicks if they want to. The Bellagio Hotel in Vegas has more rooms than the actual population of Bellagio, Italy. Lollipop is the longest word in the English language that can be typed using just the right side of a keyboard. And stewardesses is one of the longest words that can be typed using just the left side. Typewriter is the longest you can write on a single line. Dolphins will poke a pufferfish until it puffs up. Once it does, it will secrete their poison. The dolphins will lick it until they get high. I learned this at the aquarium today. Bunnies can honk and growl. Cutest little sounds too. Flopsy is a dwarf Holland Lop, slightly fawn in coloring. She is extremely friendly and makes these sounds all the time. Her range goes from a deep little growl, a low-pitched honk, to a higher-pitched, nasally, zust zust. Also likes to demand food by thumping her feet at the base of the fridge. They can also scream and it sounds pretty creepy. Donald Duck's middle name is Fauntleroy. That white stuff isn't bird poop. That's their viscous pee. The brown-green thing in the middle is their poop, as they release both at the same time. The Clifton Suspension Bridge, Bristol, was built because a wine merchant left money in his will in trust to build a, at the time, pointless bridge. An Act of Parliament was required to alter the will to enable them to charge tolls. The inventor of toilette paper had his name printed on each sheet. Little self-centered. Maybe he's just a masochist. In the 1930s, Northern Tissue Company's main selling point was that their toilet paper was splinter-free. Planes can reach a point where they fly too fast and too slow simultaneously. Too fast exceeding the airframe limits. Too slow, the air is not dense enough at this altitude to create lift without more speed. We call it the coffin corner. Air density gets so low that to create lift we have to fly fast, and upwards of the never exceed Mach speed to prevent stalling. Polar bear livers contain a lethal dose of vitamin A. All other flesh parts of them are edible. Rabbit meat contains so little fat, if you do not supplement it with other fats you can get rabbit starvation. It's why a lot of fur trappers became inexplicably ill and some died in Canada in the 19th century, and also why a lot of doomsday preppers will slowly starve after their personal disaster of choice occurs, as they choose rabbits for a meat source as they are easy to raise and take up little space. There was a British submarine in WW2 named the HMS Trident. The crew was gifted a reindeer by the Russians. They named it Pollyanna and kept it on board the sub for 6 weeks. Wait, I remember reading about this. Apparently it got too big for the hatch, so they had to truss it up when they got back on land. The captain of the Trident wanted to bring the reindeer to his in-law's farm, but the RAF ended up using it for training and his family was moved into an apartment. So Pollyanna went to a zoo. Lived for about 12 years, I think, at the zoo. 101 Dalmatians, Peter Pan, Hercules and Mulan are the only Disney movies where both parents are present and don't die by the end of the movie. Add Moana to your list. A German sub in World War II sank because the skipper didn't know how to flush the new toilet, which caused seawater to flood in and create chlorine gas when it came into contact with the ship's batteries. Even worse for them, when they surfaced, the Royal Navy had a ship right next to them. The Germans scuttled the ship and 4 men died before the remaining crew were captured. Bananas are a type of berry while strawberries aren't. What's a pointless fact you know? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.